If you open the Ark of the Covenant, what would you find? Depending on who you ask, there are 3 sacred objects, a mysterious 4th item, or something never meant to be found. On today's episode of the Infographics Show, we're finding out what's inside the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark is one of the most holy relics of the ancient Israelites, and no, it has nothing to do with Noah. Sometimes called the Ark of Testimony or the Ark of God, it's mentioned in the Bible in the book of Exodus, the first book of Kings, and the book of Numbers. It's pretty universally described and depicted as a wooden box made of acacia, decorated with gold and topped with an ornate lid, called the kaporet or seat of mercy. The kaporet is decorated with 1 cherubim on either side who are holding their wings out toward each other to create a space where God could sit to talk to Moses, which is why it's also called a seat. According to the Old Testament, the Ark was created by Moses a year after he had led his people out of Egypt. It was about 4 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet and had to be carried on gold-plated wooden staves. It was said that a person could die if they touched it directly, so hey, no pressure. The Ark was carried as the Israelites marched toward the Promised Land, and during their journey God spoke to Moses from his seat in the kaporet. According to some accounts, the Ark was also covered with a cloth to prevent anyone from looking directly at it. Historians have noted that the Ark of the Covenant strongly resembles the solar bark, the vessel in Egyptian mythology that was said to carry the sun god Ra across the sky. And this won't be the last time that you see wild stories and mythologies collide on the search for this literal holy of holies in the ancient world. The book of Exodus, in both the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Old Testament, give us the most commonly known story about what was inside of the Ark. According to these texts, the Ark is where they kept the tablets of the law, aka the tablets that had the 10 Commandments carved into them. But later on, it's also described as containing a pot of manna and another artifact called Aaron's rod. This was the walking stick used by Moses' brother Aaron, which among other miraculous things sprouted almonds and flowers. As for manna, it's a flaky, sweet edible substance with healing properties that God bestowed upon the Israelites to keep them alive as they crossed the desert. These 3 artifacts all symbolized the covenant that God made with Moses and his people. He would provide for them as long as they followed his laws. Within Jewish tradition alone, there are conflicting stories about the fate of the Ark. One story in the Hebrew Bible describes the Ark being captured by the Philistines after a battle with the Israelites. And just to be clear, when we say Philistines, we mean the ancient people living on the south coast of Canaan, not the people who can't appreciate movies with subtitles. After the Ark of the Covenant was seized, a curse fell upon the Philistines' land. Every city that the Ark was taken to was hit with a swarm of rats and a devastating sickness that caused horrible boils and tumors. And whenever the Ark was stored in a temple to one of the Philistine gods, the idols in the temple would be toppled over and broken into pieces. In order to break the curse, the Philistines put 5 gold tumors and 5 gold mice inside of the Ark as a symbolic offering, and then sent it back to Israel. So now, there's not just magical artifacts in the Ark, there's also treasure. But there is definitely also a curse on it, so unless you're up to date on your bubonic plague vaccinations, maybe don't touch it. And definitely under no circumstances should you move it to a different city, unless you're basically planning on using it as some kind of holy weapon of mass destruction. But this next account is different. It doesn't just talk about what was inside of the Ark, it claims that the Ark could destroy armies. According to the Lemba people of Zimbabwe, their ancestors once held a powerful artifact called the Ngoma Lungundu, or the Voice of God, which they carried south from a place called Senna thousands of years ago. According to them, this object also served as a powerful weapon that could sweep enemies out of the way in a huge blast of energy. Unfortunately, though, all of that power couldn't be easily contained in such a small vessel, so the Ngoma Lungundu destroyed itself not long after being brought to the Lemba's current homeland. But using a core from the original, the priests were able to construct a near-exact replica, which they took to the Dumge Mountains to bury. While we have found no evidence of the original object, the replica was discovered in a cave in the Dumge Mountains in the 1940s by a German missionary, and now it's on display in the Museum of Human Sciences in Harare. Additionally, in 2008, Professor of Jewish Studies Tudor Parfit argued in his book The Ark of the Covenant that Senna was a real city in Yemen, and that DNA testing of some of the Lemba men revealed a small percentage of Middle Eastern ancestry. Whether that means they actually once had the Ark is inconclusive, but at the very least, their ancestors may have crossed paths with the descendants of the Israelites and brought the story of the Ark home with them. But we all know what you're secretly wondering. All of these biblical and historical accounts are all well and good, but can we somehow shoehorn some aliens into this? Of course we can, because whenever there are gaps in our knowledge about ancient history, you can bet that there are a bunch of weirdos out there that are loudly yelling, "Aliens did it!" And the Ark of the Covenant is no different. Remember how we said earlier that in every city the Philistines tried to store the ark in, there were swarms of rats and the people fell victim to a sickness that covered them in boils? At first glance, it might sound as though God sent the rats, and the rats were carrying the bubonic plague, a disease known throughout antiquity and infamous for causing its victims to break out in painful boils. But if you are a true 4D chess-playing, third-eye-open, galaxy-brained genius, you might realize that the rats and the boils are totally unrelated. The real reason all those Philistines died was because the Ark of the Covenant was dangerously radioactive. It's also the reason why people couldn't directly touch it, and the reason why it had to be covered, and probably why it exploded by the time it made it to Zimbabwe. How do we know that the Ark was actually an ancient nuclear energy weapon? Because it was built to specific instructions given to Moses by God, or if you like, the aliens beamed the instructions into his head. And if that is not enough proof for you, UFOs have been spotted around the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, and we all know that UFOs are attracted to nuclear radiation. It seems pretty obvious now that we pointed it out, right? Just don't ask us how the Israelites survived the desert trek if the manna and almonds that they ate were kept in a box supposedly so radioactive that touching it would kill you. Don't worry about that. But knowing what might have been inside of the ark doesn't settle anything because every religion and every sect has a different story about where it ended up. According to the Philistine story, once the ark was returned to its rightful owners, it was kept in the city of Kiryat Ye'arim before being moved 20 years later to the Palace of David. After that, it's said that the Ark of the Covenant was taken to Solomon's temple by King Josiah as part of his campaign of religious reforms. Josiah was an extremely important king in Jewish history. He was responsible for turning Jerusalem into the center of Yahwism, the precursor to Judaism that was practiced by the Israelites, and for eliminating any worship of foreign gods from the kingdom of Judah. Josiah returned the ark to the Temple of Solomon after a campaign across the lands of the Manasseh and Ephraim tribes, where he destroyed all representations of pagan gods. After that, nobody knows for sure. The ark vanishes from historical records around the 7th century BC when the Temple of Solomon was destroyed in 587 BC. According to the Hebrew Bible, the ark is now hidden under Mount Nebo in present-day Jordan. But in the 2nd century, Rabbi Eliezer ben Jose claimed that the seat of mercy was somewhere in Rome. He had been able to identify it by a stain from where a Jewish high priest had consecrated it with his blood. But once the historical trail ends, the theories get a lot more ambitious. In the various sects of Christianity, people are going to claim that it's in their country for the clout. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church says it's housed in the ancient city of Aksum. The Malaysian people say that their ancestors brought it to the Solomon Islands. The British Israelite Association believed that it was under the hill of Tara in County Meath, Ireland. And medieval Roman Catholics believe that it was inside the altar of the Lateran Basilica in Rome. Of course, none of these claims have ever been proven. The Lateran Basilica was sacked twice in the 5th century, which gave a convenient window for the ark to be misplaced. As for the attempts to find the ark in Ireland, the British Israelite Association tried to excavate Tara Hill between 1899 and 1902. They thought it was the gravesite of an Egyptian princess who married an Irish king and then brought the ark with her from Egypt for some reason. When they tried to dig up the hill, which is the historical seat of ancient Irish kings, they were run out of town by the Irish nationalists. In the 2000s, non-invasive radar scans were done on the mountain that revealed definitively that there is no evidence that the ark is buried there. It was just another classic excuse for the British to screw over Irish heritage sites, a tale sadly as old as the British Crown in general. Declassified CIA documents show that even the CIA took a crack at finding the ark back in their believing psychic powers are real era. In 1988, a remote viewer was tasked with tracking a series of items, one of them being the ark. They claimed that it was underground, guarded by entities, and can only be opened when the time comes. As for where that was, though, the remote viewer was a little less descriptive. They described hearing people speaking Arabic and then seeing a mosque, which could place it in basically any city with a large Muslim population. So the search continues. Most Christians today believe the ark is buried under the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, but the belief that the ark is in Aksum, Ethiopia is also reasonably popular. The first instance of this story comes from the Kebra Nagast, an Ethiopian epic tale that is said to have been written as a form of propaganda that legitimized the Solomonic dynasty that ruled over Ethiopia in the 1300s. Then, in 1992, a controversial book came out called The Sign and the Seal by British author Graham Hancock, which detailed the Ethiopian account of the ark traveling down the Nile River and ending up in Aksum. And even though Hancock's contemporaries called it garbage and hogwash, the book helped further popularize the theory that the Ark was in Aksum. As recently as 2009, the Patriarch of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church made the claim that he would reveal the Ark to the public, before almost immediately deciding that he wasn't going to do that, actually. Despite the lack of evidence, the claim that the Ark is at Aksum still makes the rounds, and it has even been mentioned on Joe Rogan's podcast, which we all know is 100% right about everything. We might never know for sure if the Ark of the Covenant was real or simply just a small piece of a larger mythology surrounding Moses and the Exodus from Egypt. Even the existence of Moses himself is hotly debated in both theological and secular scholarly circles. But there is no doubt that the Ark will always remain a source of fascination across multiple cultures and traditions, and at least one fedora-wearing hero who thinks that it belongs in a museum. Still hungry for more Ark content? Check out the most weird stories in the Bible, or watch this instead.